Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Eric Levine, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney. Our good friend, Jesse Garcia, the vice chair of the state Republican Party, county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, is in Milwaukee as we speak at the Republican National Convention. Well, before we start talking about the convention and those issues, Eric, I want to raise something that I find one of the most horrible events of recent time, the attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump, who was the 45th president of the United States, at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. To me, this is just a horrible act, but it shows you how precarious and precious life is, and how everything can turn in a moment. There are a lot of questions to be asked about what happened and why it happened. But let's just point this out. Trump is a leading candidate for the presidency of the United States, is a former president of the United States. What was the Secret Service doing or not doing? Was he getting the adequate protection? Did they scope out the area properly? And those are all questions that we need to have an investigation on. But what I want to ask you is, from the political perspective, the Trump assassination attempt has implications. What are they?
Well, first, let me be on the record and clear that I agree with 100%. This is an absolutely despicable, disgusting, inexcusable act. Our elections are supposed to be decided at the ballot box, and this effort to assassinate a former president, a leading candidate for president, has no place in America. Period. End of sentence. And because of that, it behooves the Secret Service to make sure that they do their jobs. And we'll get to it in a second as to the failures of the Secret Service. But politically, what does it mean? Well, everyone's talking about lowering the rhetoric, lowering the temperature. They're saying that because of the words used, accusing Trump of being a threat to democracy, accusing him of being like Hitler. A fascist. Well, I mean, they didn't just accuse Trump of being a fascist. They accused people like me of being a semi-fascist, whatever that is. But Joe Biden would go around and accuse Republicans, saying that they're all MAGA Republicans and they're semi-fascists. I don't know what that is.
That's half the country, by the way.
It's about 74 million votes. And then he would accuse Georgia of passing a perfectly reasonable voting rights act, a voting legislation.
With respect to voter integrity.
Right, exactly.
With ID cards.
Exactly, called it Jim Crow 2.0. And then it turns out right after that law is passed in the next election, a record number of minorities vote. So there's no question that the rhetoric is off the charts. But let's be clear. The only person responsible for this is the shooter. No one else. Now, the rhetoric doesn't help because it may incite the mentally ill, and it still remains to be seen what exactly this guy's motive is. They haven't told us yet. I mean, you have people like Hinckley, who shot Ronald Reagan. He was motivated. He wanted to prove to Jodie Foster that he was an important person. Never met Jodie Foster, had no connection to Jodie Foster, but just had it in his head. He would kill the president, and Jodie Foster would be impressed. So we have no idea what's motivating this guy, but he is the single person responsible for this. So now all of a sudden we're told that this language that we're all using, we have to ramp down or tone down the rhetoric, make our politics more civil. Now, I happen to agree we should make our politics more civil because people need to be able to discuss world events, current events, and have calm conversations based on the merits. And people need to be able to disagree, but disagree agreeably. And families shouldn't be torn apart because they're having all these crazy conversations. That's really the greater threat when you have this amped up amped up rhetoric. I don't think you can tie the shooting to the rhetoric because you don't know what motivates the shooter. But I do think the most fleeting part of this was if we were to have these civil discussions and we were to try and focus on unity, how long will this last? I mean, even Joe Biden went, we're going to try and tone down the rhetoric.
How long did it last?
That lasted about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Now, the Democrats...
Absolutely. What he did is he jumped in when he was interviewed by Lester Holt, and he went back to Trump being a threat to democracy and can't be president.
Right. Now, the Democrats have two issues alone. They have abortion and they have Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump is taken off the table, this threat to democracy, they've got nothing else to talk about other than abortion. So just as a political necessity, the Democrats are not going to be able to tone down their rhetoric. And I don't know that they should be required to. I mean, let them say what they want to say. And the bad speech should be pushed out by better speech and more civil speech. And that's why it really behooves Donald Trump to be calm, to speak civilly, to take the high road, because nobody is really expecting that right now. But if he can achieve that, he really puts Biden in a box, because Biden becomes the lunatic, and Biden looks like he's desperate, and Donald Trump seems like the person who's trying to unite the country. So I think from a political perspective, it really behooves Donald Trump to be the grown-up in the room while Joe Biden is completely disintegrating before our eyes. You know, the entire Democratic Party is in disarray. They have a president who's clearly infirm. He's clearly addled. For the country's sake, he really should resign because he's just not in charge and the country is rudderless.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because as you and I were getting ready to go on the air together, two things were developing. One, Adam Schiff, who's the congressman who led the false charge against Trump on impeachment inquiries and lied and lied and lied and lied, is running for the United States Senate.
He was the champion of the Russia hoax.
Right. Absolutely despicable human being, and will probably get a Senate seat because of California having such a vast Democratic majority. And he went out there and he said that Biden should not run. He should withdraw and withdraw now. At the same time, Schumer, the majority leader of the Senate, Democratic leader of the Senate, is called for a delay of the convention for the Democrats. So what is that about?
Well, it's pretty clear that the reports of the Biden of their efforts to derail the Biden campaign were premature. To dump Joe were premature. Right. They may have just gone underground, and they're still going on. You know, Adam Schiff doesn't know what to eat for breakfast until he's asked Nancy Pelosi whether he should have scrambled eggs or an omelet. So he could not and would never have made the statement unless Nancy Pelosi said it was okay.
And Schumer wouldn't have done it unless Obama was aboard.
Or Obama was aboard, and Hakeem Jeffries was aboard, so because this is not a leader. So that's so absolutely right. So these are the hands of Obama and Pelosi. I agree with that 100%. What that will lead to, I'm not sure. But one thing I find quite interesting in this Dump Joe movement is who is Joe Biden's biggest supporters. It's the progressive radical left. Bernie Sanders, AOC, the Squad, the Progressive Caucus, they are his strongest supporters. And that bodes really badly for the country, because Joe Biden is going to need as much support to get through the convention as he possibly can. So to the extent that it's possible, he's going to run even further left. And a perfect example of that is what's going on in Israel. Joe Biden is spending a lot of time in Michigan because that's a state that he correctly believes he needs to win the election. So he's spending a disproportionate amount of time speaking to the Dearborn Jew haters who believe Israel has no right to exist, are rooting for Hamas, not just hate Israel and Jews, they hate America. And Joe Biden needs their votes. So I think as we get closer and closer to the election, certainly at least through the convention if we ever get there, Joe Biden is going to be distancing himself, and keep your eyes open for this, is going to be distancing himself more and more from Israel, using Netanyahu as some sort of foil. in order to entice those votes. So politically, that's going to be some of the fallout here from that. But just tying it back to the Trump assassination attempt, there is no way that the Democrats are going to give up on their rhetoric that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. You're going to start seeing the January 6th tapes over and over again as soon as the Republican National Convention ends, in my view.
Iran is reported to have put out a contract on President Trump. Though we know there are open contracts on Ambassador Bolton, Secretary of State Pompeo, National Security Advisor O'Brien. Why is it...
There's a fatwa.
Right. But why is it that the Biden administration doesn't get the word out to these clowns in Iran, these vicious, evil zealots, that an attack on those people is an attack on America? It's an act of war.
They still believe that the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Of course, it's the worst foreign policy decision since World War II, but they are so desperate for this deal that they are afraid to offend Iran. I mean, look, Iran is responsible for approximately 125 attacks against American service members in Syria and Iraq since October 7th. Now, not all of those attacks are carried out by Iran directly. Most of them are carried out by Iranian surrogates. And then, of course, you include the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah. But in terms of direct attacks against American service members, about 125 attacks since October 7th. And we have done absolutely nothing to protect our troops. If America isn't going to protect its own troops, why do we think for a minute the Biden administration is going to care if they knock off some old members of a cabinet? I mean, look, let's be clear. When my son fought in Syria, he was in the Marines, and he led a mortar platoon in Syria fighting ISIS in 2018, 2019. And I was worried about his safety every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every week. But I believed, and I still believe, I believed then and I believe now, God forbid there had been an attack against him by Iran or one of their proxies. I don't doubt for a second that Donald Trump would have responded forcefully and immediately. Fast forward to those same service members, God bless them, who are carrying out the same missions that my son did. They don't believe for a second that Joe Biden has their back. They don't. If I'm a parent of a service member in Syria fighting ISIS, I'm not just petrified of Iran and their terrorist proxies. I'm terrified of Joe Biden and his complete inability to defend our troops. And the Iranians understand that. And the Russians understand it. And the Chinese understand it. And the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah and North Korea. They all understand it. You can attack America with impunity. You can push America around and we'll take it. This has to end.
Well, in that regard, Eric, a recent article in Gatestone points out that Iran and Russia are in the hostage-taking business, that this is a capital venture
news
for them.
That's news.
I
see that every day.
Right. So when you capitulate to hostage-takers, to terrorism, and you give them money, for a few people, you give them $6 billion, which they put back into their war machine, their terrorist finance regime. When you do that, you only encourage it. You can't. Look, I feel very badly about hostage-taking. I understand how awful it is to see it happen to someone you love. Nobody wants to see it happen. But when you capitulate to hostage-taking and that kind of terrorism, you're making a big mistake. You're emboldening them, you're giving them resources, and you're telling them that it works. It's the breakdown of international law and order. What say you?
Look, Hamas, here's a perfect example. Hamas understands that. We all remember Gilad Shalit. He was an Israeli soldier, an IDF soldier, who was captured by Hamas and held in Gaza. And to get him out, because Jews and Israelis believe in life, in contrast to Hamas, which is a nihilistic death cult, and a Nazi organization, which believes in death, they held Shalit and then traded him for 1,000 Palestinian criminals being held in Israeli prisons. One of those 1,000 was Yahya Sinwar. Sinwar is, of course, the mastermind of October 7th and the leader of Hamas. There's a price to be paid. It's not just if you keep dealing with terrorist states and you negotiate with hostage takers that they'll take more hostages. It's how many people, innocent people, die in the future if you don't confront them now. How many people died on October 7th because of Sinwar? God forbid something should have happened to Gilad Shalit, but it's a reasonable question to ask whether or not swapping 1,000 prisoners, which included Sinwar, for Gilad Shalit was in Israel's best interest.
Well, not only that, it means that the terrorists have read the mindset, the psychology, the culture, the values of the Israelis and of a lot of other Western countries. For example, Sweden just did a trade, too, of a terrorist and a barbarian, a torturer, a killer. So what you're saying is it works, and the other side is going to fold. It's just a question of how soon and how much you get for it. A very dangerous proposition. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse Garcia, the vice chair of the state Republican Party, county chair of Suffolk County Party, is literally in Milwaukee as we speak at the Republican National Convention. With me here in the studio is our good friend, learned attorney, commentator, and essayist, Eric Levine. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Five immersive worlds, one amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe, now open at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Tell Me What Happened is a podcast series that shares dramatic stories of people helping people, and every one of them is true. These uplifting stories will fill you with hope. Listen today to Tell Me What Happened.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back on Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse Garcia, the chairman of the Suffolk County Republican Party and vice chair of the state Republican Party, is out in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention. With me here in the studio is our good friend Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. And at the break, Eric, you had some thoughts about the Trump assassination attempt and linking this to Iran terrorism.
Well, the link would be, when you raised the Iran thing, it triggered something in my mind. A presidential candidate from, or the leading candidate from a particular party and a former president, the security around him is extraordinary to begin with. And then when you have the knowledge that you have there's a threat from Iran, which we know carries out death threats, you would think that the security around the president would be even higher. People would be even more alert. So it just makes the failing of the Secret Service last Saturday all the more confounding and bewildering. How could this guy get on a roof with a clear shot at the podium where Trump is standing? And then the explanation from the Secret Service is, we only had responsibility for all the territory within some perimeter. And this building was just outside the perimeter.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so of course it's ridiculous. So apparently they put Barney Fife in charge of that building while the rest of the Secret Service is securing everything inside it. How someone could not have been on that roof is beyond comprehension. And when you lay on top of that proof, I mean, there are videos people took with their cameras of Americans, of residents standing there pointing to the gunman, climbing up with a gun, pointing it out to police. He has a gun and he's climbing to the roof minutes before the shots ring out, and nothing happens. It is such a colossal failure. But this leads into another failing of this administration. Who's the head of the Secret Service? A woman by the name of Kimberly Chittle.
A DEI appointee.
Yeah.
A crony appointee of Joe Biden.
Jill Biden.
Jill Biden.
She was good friends with Jill Biden. Jill Biden, who is probably running the country, more like Edith Wilson, ran it when Woodrow Wilson was deathly ill and no one knew about it. She saw to it that Kimberly Chittle became head of the Secret Service. The woman had no qualifications for that job. Has she been fired yet?
Absolutely not.
The woman is still running it. She's still running the organization. But this is endemic to this administration. No one is ever fired. Look at Mayorkas. You have a completely open border. The guy's a colossal failure. Has he been fired? Absolutely not. During COVID, we had serious supply chain issues. Pete Buttigieg goes on paternity leave. Is he fired? Absolutely not. The cabinet is just filled with incompetent after incompetent, and no one's fired. And I think the absolutely best example of this is we all remember the catastrophic surrender in Afghanistan. But the exclamation point on that surrender is the death of 13 service members because somebody gave the order that the Taliban would secure the perimeter of the airport.
That was a brilliant idea.
The Taliban was put in charge of the security of American service members. And then, of course, unfortunately, 13 service members were murdered in a terrorist attack. To this day, we don't know who gave that order.
And no one has been held accountable.
And then at the debate, Joe Biden actually said no service members has died on his watch. No one has been held accountable. Nobody's been fired. When you have such high levels of incompetence and a refusal to fire people, it just demonstrates that competence is the coin of the realm. It doesn't matter whether you can succeed or not. If you're a black woman, you can become vice president. If you're a woman, you can become head of the Secret Service. If you're Hispanic, you can be head of Homeland Security. If you're gay, you can become head of transportation. It's just merit has no role in this administration. This guy's got to go.
But listen, this problem is, and with the open border, and you have open contracts. And by the way, there's the contracts not just against the four people I named before, O'Brien and Pompeo and Bolton and President Trump, but there's a list of 50 people, former national security advisors in the Trump administration, and there's a hit list on them promulgated by the Iranians.
Well,
and so you have an open border. So who's protecting when you have an open border? You don't think you're getting some terrorists, some assassins coming through that open border?
Yeah, this notion that everybody who comes through the southern border is from Guatemala or Nicaragua or El Salvador is just a patent lie. You have people coming from over 100 countries. We have people from Yemen, from China, from Iran, Somalia. You name the country, they're here. They are here. And they're here to do us harm. And this goes beyond, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the convention. This goes beyond certain illegal aliens who are just thugs and criminals and rape and murder some of our citizens. Some of these people are terrorists. They're here. And it would be shocked. It's not if a terrorist attack is going to happen. The better question is when. And it's likely to happen probably before the election because they want to have an impact on the election. You have terrorists here. We know they're here, but we release them into the general population and we don't know where they are. It's insane.
Absolutely insane. Let's switch gears, Eric. Let's go to the Republican convention. So Donald Trump designates Senator Vance of Ohio as his vice president. Now, you and I both believe that there are other very well qualified people who could have filled that spot. It was obviously a political calculation on the part of Donald Trump in terms of what he's trying to do in the party and his messaging, his relationship to his son, Donald Jr., who obviously was pushing for Vance. Vance, obviously a very smart guy, an editor of the Yale Law Review, a serviceman. I think he was a Marine, if I'm correct.
Yes, he was a Marine.
He was a Marine.
Served in Iraq.
An author, the Hillbilly Elegy, a best-selling book, and I think they made a movie out of it. So, and I've met him. I don't know him well. I know some of the other people who are in contention. I know much better. But he is a designated candidate. And, of course, he will get the nomination because this really is Trump's convention. And I guess in a very real sense, it's Trump's choice, and he has a right to make that choice. I think he's very able. The assassination attempt shows you how we're all mortal and everything can change, as I said earlier, in a moment. I wouldn't, if I were making the decision, I would have picked Vance. I would have waited, let him season for a while before he moved to center stage. Certainly another 4 years or 8 years in the Senate or other position. But if you go head to head and you compare Senator Vance to Vice President Kamala Harris, there's no choice. There is no way anybody in their right mind will believe that Kamala Harris is capable of the presidency. And I've said this, and I'll say it again, because it drives me absolutely insane. The Democratic Party, because of their identity politics, have designated somebody who is incompetent to be president of the United States, which is truly a threat to our national security. What say you?
Well, J.D. Vance, I mean, let's start with where he comes from. I think if you look at the arc of the man's life, I mean, he's from Appalachia, he's from absolute squalor and poverty. And if you look at the arc of his life, he comes out of that, goes to Yale, becomes a lawyer, gets elected to the Senate, or becomes a very successful businessman, then runs for Senate, becomes a senator. If you look at the arc of his life, he really needs to be admired and applauded. It's a remarkable achievement.
He has a great story.
And what it shows is, no matter who you are or where you come from, if you take advantage of the opportunities that this country presents, you can do anything. And that speaks as much about Senator Vance as it does about America. So his achievements are to be applauded. The question, though, is whether or not he was the right choice. There were no shortage of magnificent choices. Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, Tom Cotton, Doug Burgum, Bill Hagerty. I mean, the list goes on and on. These are seasoned people, qualified people. They would have been spectacular choices. In the wake of the assassination attempt, there was a brief period, maybe we're still in it, but we'll see, where Donald Trump had the opportunity to not just unite the party, but to unite the country, to reach out to people with a vice presidential candidate that was unifying. Nikki Haley would have been such a choice, in addition to some of the other names that I just mentioned. The one person he picked was J.D. Vance, and I just don't know that Senator Vance has that unifying quality about him. He's very confrontational. He's an isolationist, so it's very troubling to members in the Republican Party and the Reagan wing of the party. He's a populist. The party has, it's a big tent party, but he's a populist, and he's also many of his economic policies are somewhat anathema to traditional free market capitalists. So I don't know that he is time will tell. Maybe he will become, because he is very smart and he clearly can learn on the job. But right now, I don't know that he would be the unifying figure that I would have picked. You want to attract independents. You want to attract women. You want to attract the Nikki Haley voters. Is he the person that does that? I think Trump's calculation was kind of 180 degrees of where I was. And I will say that the next time Donald Trump follows my advice will be the first. So it's not like he consults with me at all. But his calculation was probably, I'm going to win this. So I'm not really interested in a broadening of the base, because I'm going to win it anyway. So what I want is a legacy pick. who's the best person, after my term to carry on my legacies, to be my disciple going forward. And on that score, he's probably right. J.D. Vance probably is the best person.
I
for
think
that.
that's exactly right, Eric. I think you hit the nail on the head.
So I think that's what he was vying for. Now, is he right? We'll see. I mean, will it cost him votes? Probably. Will it cost him so many votes that he won't win? I think some of that depends on whether or not Joe Biden is ultimately the candidate. I still think he will be, but as we were discussing at the beginning of the show, that remains in flux. If there's another candidate other than Joe Biden, that calculus may backfire. But
I think part of the calculus, the electoral calculus, is that given his background, being a Midwesterner, the hillbilly elegy, he can speak to working people who are strivers, hardworking people, not the free lunch crowd.
You mean the Reagan Democrats? What you're saying is you want to appeal to the Reagan Democrats. Ronald Reagan was able to get those same voters.
Absolutely.
But by being peace through strength, projecting American power abroad, by being a full-throated supporter of capitalism, the single greatest job-supporting program in the history of the world. He raised up everybody. Incomes rose. People's lives improved. The country was safer. You don't have to be a populist or from Appalachia to be able to save the common man or to be the champion of the blue-collar worker. Ronald Reagan got those votes.
I agree with that. But I think the calculus was that it could help in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. I think
it could also backfire in Pennsylvania. I mean, part of one of the groups that you want to get, we can talk about this again when we talk about the convention. Let's say you want to get the Jews in the suburbs of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Does J.D. Vance give you comfort? You want to get the women, so you want to get suburban women in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Is J.D. Vance going to help you with that? I don't know. I don't know if he will.
Well, what gives me comfort is at least to have somebody who's a first-rate mind.
That's true.
He's
a brilliant guy. There's no question.
There's no doubt about it. And I like the rags to riches, the lifting from the bootstrap stories. It wasn't handed to him because of identity politics. And I think that's commendable. And I think, as you do, that he can learn. That you and I had other first choices, indeed a multitude of other people I would rather have seen. But again, you go into the voting booth and you look at your choice, Biden-Harris versus Trump-Vance. And to me, it's no choice at all if you care about our national security, our economy, and going forward to make us a strong country. And I think we have to deal with that. We're not going to get everything we want. And I also say, again, any person who votes in this election, which is a binary choice for a third-party candidate, is wasting his or her vote. This is too serious a matter in terms of the future of this country, our destiny, both internationally and internally, to leave a petulant vote for a third-party candidate just because I hate both those guys. Pick the one who you believe is the best one to lead us forward and protect America. This is Let the Record Show. We're taking a break. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. We'll be back in just a few moments for more interesting conversation.
This is Let the Record Show.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
My favorite thing about Shipt since I signed up for Target Circle 360? No price markups when I order same-day delivery from tons of local stores. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. I won't lie, I've had too much fun being like, markups on groceries? Not in my fridge. Markups on pet food? Not for my DOG. Markups on tools, electronics, home goods, meds? Not in my house. Anyway, it's awesome. Order now at shipped.com/360. Terms apply.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
And we're back on Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse Garcia is out at the Republican National Convention. As you all know, Jesse is the vice chair of the state Republican Party and the county chair of the Suffolk Party. And he's there right now working the floor, trying to rally support for the Trump-Vance ticket. With me is Eric Levine, my good friend, noted commentator, essayist, attorney. Let's focus in on the Republican convention for a while, Jesse. I'll strike that. Eric, go ahead, please.
Well, first, Jesse's out there with all the other Republicans. I got a call from a reporter the other day, and they asked me, why aren't you out there? So I said, it's kind of like the State of the Union address. I'm the designated Republican. God forbid something happens to the Republican contingent out in Milwaukee. We'll know there's still at least one Republican in New York. So that's why I didn't go, is to safeguard the longevity of the New York.
Was that printed, or they just...
No, they didn't print that one. They printed other stuff, but they didn't print that one. So the convention so far, I think there's good and there's bad. I think it's mostly good. We'll focus on the good for a second. I think for the most part, there's a sense of unity in the Republican Party, certainly at the convention. When Donald Trump came out on Monday, it was actually quite emotional if you were watching it. I mean, he seemed very subdued. I don't know if he was shedding a tear, but he certainly seemed moved by the fact. I guess you reflect on your life when you come within literally an inch of being killed. And he really looked. He was very much humanized on Monday, and I think that was very helpful for the country to see the humanity of the man. And I think it had a very unifying effect on the party and anybody who would have been watching it. And I think if you juxtapose that to Joe Biden and the disarray in the Democratic Party, it's going to be, you're going to have in one hand Donald Trump, that picture of Donald Trump on the stage after he's been shot in the ear, standing up, fist in the air in front of the American flag, shouting "fight." And then you're going to compare that to Joe Biden falling up the stairs to an airplane. The strength versus weakness, the agility versus the fragility. So I think, from that perspective, just the optics are very much for Trump. And also on the unity point, he had a lot of terrific speakers from various wings of the party. Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Tim Scott, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, all on a common theme of why it's so important for Donald Trump to become president. And these are different people from different wings of the party. Nikki Haley, of course, from the Reagan wing of the party. So that was all very good, them standing up there and talking about why it was important in this binary choice to elect Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden. But I thought the most interesting part of it, this is still under the umbrella of good.
This is the good discussion.
This is still the good discussion. Was they brought out yesterday a number of everyday Americans.
I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
I thought that was
brilliant.
I thought it was absolutely moving. You had a number of people who have been victimized by illegal aliens, women who've been raped and murdered by illegal aliens, someone who's been convicted of murder in Costa Rica, still finds their way to the United States. Someone's been deported 5 times, who comes back.
A mother talked about losing her child to fentanyl.
Yes, then you had a mother talking about losing her child to fentanyl as it comes across our border. And, of course, the border's wide open. But I thought the most interesting common person that they brought was a woman by the name of Madeline Blame, Blame. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to just go on YouTube. It's about 6 minutes long. She's an African-American woman who comes to speak at the Republican convention and talks about how district attorneys like Alvin Bragg and progressive criminal policies of the squad and the New York City Council are destroying our minority
and the New York State Legislature.
And New York State Legislature, which, of course, let's remember that bill was signed by Cuomo, are destroying our minority communities. Their schools are failing. Crime is on the rise. You can't walk the streets. And as she put it, they have stabbed the minority community in the back. The woman is absolutely brilliant. Do yourself a favor. Spend the 6 minutes and watch it. She talks about supporting the blue, why we must stand with the police, because the police are the ones that stand between us and disaster. She goes after Alvin Bragg by name and how he refuses to enforce the laws and how he's pro-criminal. And she talks about other, pro-criminal district attorneys in the country, but she really puts a focus on Alvin Bragg. Another group that they're going after is the Jewish community. And Nikki Haley made a number of comments about the explosion of anti-Semitism in the United States. But Donald Trump invited the director of the Republican Jewish Coalition, my good friend Matt Brooks, and in interest of full disclosure, I'm on the board of the RJC. But Matt Brooks actually addressed the Republican National Committee. And during his speech, he asked the question to the entire crowd, do you support Israel? And the place went wild cheering for Israel. I dare any speaker at the Democratic National Committee at their convention to ask that same question. Let's see what the response to that will be. You'll get boos. You'll get jeers.
You have people walking out.
You have people walking out. That question will not be asked because they don't want to have that answer on national television. So reaching out to minorities, they had a series of black speakers come talk about their business opportunities and how their lives were better under Trump than under Biden. I really thought that was incredibly effective. And as you pointed out, as you mentioned, they had some of the average American working class who had been victims of fentanyl and other crimes. But then there's the bad part of it. And let's be honest, there's a bad part of it. Some of the speakers were what I would describe as fringe lunatics. Why Marjorie Taylor Greene was given a slot to speak is beyond me. This is a woman we should be distancing ourselves from. Charlie Kirk, everything's a conspiracy. He's a wingnut. He's a nut job. He's a snake oil salesman. He was given the opportunity to speak. Carrie Lake, to this day, she's still wedded to the idea that the 2020 election was stolen. And even if you think it, why are you talking about it at the convention? Forget it. But you can't help herself. So it just reminds us that there are some fringes in the Republican Party that we would be better served marginalizing. But I guess the theory was we're the big tent, we include everybody. But I would like to remind folks that even at the circus, when you have a big tent, the freak show is always outside the tent. And as a Republican, I would like to make sure that our freak show, to the extent it exists, is outside the tent.
Problem is the Democratic Party, my party.
Well, that's just one giant freak show. Exactly.
The whole tent is controlled by the freaks.
Yeah.
Okay. You have the Hollywood crowd. You have the professional politicians who somehow go to Congress and make themselves enormously rich, like former Speaker Pelosi. And how did she do that? You have people who know nothing about public policy opining on it. You do have a dangerous faction that are anti-Semitic, anti-American, the squad, as you call them, and everybody's denominated them as a squad. But they're not just the 4 or 6 or 8 people of that squad. There's a large segment of the Democratic Party who subscribe to those views or who are intimidated by those views.
That's the wing of the party that's ascendant.
That's right. They control that tent. So again, you give me a choice as a common sense Democrat between the one and the other, and to me, it's no choice at all. I want to switch gears, Eric.
Switch away.
I am about to. So you have Judge Cannon, the United States District Court judge in Florida, has dismissed the so-called documents case, saying that Jack Smith, the special counsel, was wrongfully appointed because he wasn't nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and then designated by Attorney General Garland, which is one way of doing it. If he's a principal player or if he's an inferior officer, then you do it by statute, and there was no statute appointing him, dismissing the case. I believe that's the right decision, and large numbers of credible lawyers, professors, academics, former attorneys general said that was the right decision. It was also a basis of a concurring opinion by Justice Clarence Thomas in another decision of a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was the right decision. Jack Smith should never have been appointed. Garland did that because he wanted to pretend that this was independent and wasn't being run out of the Biden White House and the Biden Justice Department. In fact, this prosecution was exactly that. So that raises the issue of whether or not the judge in the District of Columbia, Chutton, will do the right thing too and follow the lead of Cannon and dismiss that case as well, the so-called January 6th case, which is also headed by Jack Smith. Seems to me if the one fails, the other fails, and that'll be very, very interesting. Garland has now made noises that he's going to appeal the Cannon decision. And one other portion of a decision correctly pointed out that the funding for special counsel or alleged special counsel Jack Smith's office, the money spent was not appropriated by Congress, and they had no right to do that. So you have the violation of the Appointments Clause, and you also have the violation of the power of the purse of the Congress. Okay. Now, our mutual friend, Andy McCarthy, former assistant U.S. attorney, Southern District of New York, a commentator, an essayist in the National Review and the New York Post, and often on television, as well as on WABC with Katz and Cosby, and I often talk to Andy. He wrote a great column, and fundamentally what he said was as follows. If we're interested in bringing the country together and stopping the divisions, you have to stop lawfare. That is warfare using the legal system, the prosecutorial function, the judicial function, the investigative function. Just stop the nonsense about going after your political enemies, your political opponents, by using show trials and show prosecutions. Just dismiss all of them. The country will be a safer, a better place, and we'll have the beginning of national unity. And by the way, as Andy correctly points out, it would also be a step up for Biden to show he's above the petty partisan politics and repudiate the weaponization of our legal system. What say you, Eric?
Well, one of the things I find most interesting is in the wake of this decision dismissing the Florida case is the abuse, the verbal abuse and criticism that the Democrats are heaping on the judiciary and these judges. Somehow when Donald Trump or Republicans criticize judges, it's a threat to democracy. But when the Democrats heap all this criticism on the judiciary, it's to save our democracy.
Alan Dershowitz,
the hypocrisy is unbelievable.
Alan Dershowitz is a real Democrat, but a common sense Democrat and a true liberal, has said he can't get over the hypocrisy. And he was saying it again on the show the other night when we were talking about it. He said he just can't get over it. If it's an ethical breach to attack judges, if you're a lawyer, if the judge is Merchan, who presided over this trumped-up trial that Bragg brought in Manhattan, if you're not allowed to do that and it's a breach of ethics, then why is it not a breach of ethics to say that she's a corrupt judge because she happened to be the judge who presided over a decision which was a thoughtful 93-page decision, which learned scholars and academics and professors and judges have pointed out is very well reasoned. Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, this was not a shabby decision. It was well thought out, and it was a very credible decision. I think was correct.
And ultimately, the Supreme Court will decide it. I actually think it was correct as well. But just tying this back to the conversation we were having at the beginning of the show regarding civility and lowering the temperature and the rhetoric, we all remember Chuck Schumer taking to the steps of the Supreme Court threatening Alito and Kavanaugh and Gorsuch by name that they will reap the whirlwind. I mean, by name, threatening them.
And somebody walks
up to Kavanaugh's house
with a gun.
With a gun, and the guy's about to go on trial. I think the trial is supposed to begin in August. But guy shows up with a gun. Now, again, he's responsible for showing up with the gun. But somehow Chuck Schumer was saving democracy by threatening Supreme Court justices. Look, it comes back to one basic principle. There's got to be one rule for everybody. You can't be a threat to democracy if you're a Republican and you say something, but if you say the exact same thing and you're a Democrat, you're saving the nation. It's insane.
Well, let me point this out to you. You know, we were talking before about the attacks that you'll have. You know, the Democrats they'll attack Trump, abortion. But now they're also waging war on the Supreme Court of the United States because they don't agree with some of their decisions. So Biden has just announced on his attack on the Supreme Court that he wants to
term limit.
He wants to have a term limit, which is another way of saying he wants to pack the court. That's number one.
Well, I think it's unconstitutional.
Of
the Constitution says it's a lifetime appointment.
Of course. It's ridiculous.
No law you can pass can trump the Constitution.
Of course. So he needs a constitutional amendment for that. Then, of course, he wants to impose a code of ethics on the justices. He forgets that this Constitution has separation of powers.
Right. It's an equal branch of government.
He has no right, either by executive order or by act of Congress, to make them have ethics provisions. They have to adopt themselves as an equal branch of government. And, you know, the other thing he's done, he now says he wants to have, because he disagrees with the constitutional interpretation of the Supreme Court on immunity, which, again, I think was a rightly decided decision.
He's very short-sighted if he disagrees.
Because he may damn well need
He's going to be the
immunity.
beneficiary of it.
You're absolutely correct. But everything's about the politics with Biden. He doesn't understand the policy or the legal implications. Now he wants to lead a charge for a constitutional amendment to limit the Supreme Court decision. Now, he has no chance of getting that thing through as a constitutional amendment. I think you would agree. It's all about a political gambit. It's all about creating a narrative so he can go against the Supreme Court and make the Supreme Court the bad guys. What do you say?
I agree. I think that's the proper analysis. Look, Joe Biden is flailing. He's failing and he's flailing. And he needs to, he's grasping for straws. And right now he's grasping at straws that will help him shore up his progressive base, because that's currently all he has. He's trying to play out the clock. He needs to get past August 9th, when the Ohio law either puts you on the ballot or not. By August 9th, if you're not nominated, you can't be on the ballot in Ohio. And the Democrats are not just going to completely give up on Ohio, although the Chuck Schumer request that they delay the convention kind of runs, counter to that. So I'm not sure. Well,
he's not. Listen, with all due respect to Senator Schumer, he can't be too much of a lawyer if he thinks he can get away with that.
Yeah, well, he's never practiced anything. He's been living on the public largesse since the day he graduated from law school. Yeah, the guy's never been in the private sector. He's never created a single job in his life. Never really worked for in his life.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk about desperation, by the way? The other thing Biden's now floating out there, because it wasn't bad enough that he wants to pay off all the student debts, which he has no right to do.
Which is unconstitutional. He's been told that repeatedly. He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. But now he wants to mandate, as a matter of the public policy of the United States, through executive order or legislation, a cap on rent increases of 5% across the country. Where does he have the authority to do that?
He has no authority to do that.
But it doesn't stop him from doing it because he's playing to the crowd.
It's also an incredibly awful policy. I mean, look, Supreme Court wrote a decision. There were rent abatements during COVID, and President Biden extended them. It was brought to the Supreme Court, and Kavanaugh, the opinion was that they were unconstitutional, but we'll let you continue them until these expire. But then after that, no more.
Bad decision.
It was a terrible decision. They should have just said, stop. You can't do it.
Can't do it.
But that was the decision. So notwithstanding the fact that when it expired and he was told it was unconstitutional, he renewed them anyway by executive order. And he actually said, I know the Supreme Court said I can't do this, but I'm doing it anyway. Go try and stop me. So this is a guy who has no use for the law. This is a guy who has no use for the courts. But when Republicans criticize the court, it's a threat to democracy. And when Democrats just completely flaunt the courts, they're saving the country.
Well, as we head down to the end of the show, I want to say this. It's more important than ever that we try to speak calmly and intelligently about the public issues that face us. It's more important than ever that the campaign be waged on competing issues and interpretations of the issues. The personal assassination attacks, I believe, engender violence. I'm not saying that the people who are shooters are not the real cause of this violence, but you don't create an atmosphere of violence and hatred. You can object to people's policies. You don't have to hate them, and you don't have to wish them death. And we have to stop this. Whether you're on the left or the right, Democrat or Republican or independent, we're all in this together. We're all Americans, the greatest country in the world. If we want to survive and flourish, we have to understand we're all in this together. Our enemies externally wish us ill. If they could destroy us, they would. And we better wake up, because these are big issues that have to be faced for the next 7 months by this president, and then going forward, the next president in the 4 years thereafter. We're in the fight of our lives, the most serious time we've faced since World War II, and we better wake up and grow up and be responsible adults. This has been Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I hope Jesse is having a fruitful and enjoyable time out in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention. I'm very happy to have my good friend and colleague, Eric Levine, noted attorney, essayist, and commentator, joining me today. God bless you, and of course, God bless America.
This is Let the Record Show.